because there was no quorum that we we don't have minutes from last time. I guess what I'd like to know about are the conservation assessments. Again, we know about we're getting close, right, on there, on yours.
Yeah.
And I don't know about Emma.
Don't either.
Do you have the clue?
Yeah. And then the city.
In the city, I think we will be working with Barbara, but we don't have a date yet.
Okay,
I
Barbara.
can't hear you.
Barbara, we'll be working with Barbara more, like several of you have, but we don't have a date yet.
What about the schools?
The schools would like to be participating, which is one reason I held off on that whole portion. It's not that big. It's a couple file cabinets or something. It's not, I was worried it was gonna be,
Look down in the cellar. They've got a lot of other stuff, but isn't file cabinet.
but there's stuff they don't want included.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are things that they have to keep that they want included in it. And others they don't. So it's not as, I was worried about that. I was worried that it would be like every school has,
A painting
yeah,
Oh.
no.
that they do not treat well.
Oh, well,
What are the
that's-
things they want to archive?
It's paper.
Yeah. Files.
Yeah, it's files that they have to keep and a lot of them they're not allowed to keep. So a lot of their stuff
Yeah.
goes away after 7 years or something. So,
That's okay.
yeah, it is. But I was more interested in what you're saying. It was how many types of media are we talking about? And they were only talking about paper.
Okay.
But I'll mention the painting.
Yeah. They may not know it in the office.
Okay,
Hi there.
Oh,
so I think what I really want to spend time on today is the review of the documents that were sent to us by our attorneys. And I know Trevor has reviewed that and Linnea reviewed it, and we could Trevor sent Linnea's email to you, so we could actually put that up on the screen. And Tom, I guess I'm wondering about a review of that material.
I haven't discussed it with Jeff yet.
Okay. I'm hoping he shows up.
Me too.
Emma, how are you doing with that?
Yeah, I reviewed it all and I looked at Linnea's notes too, and I would agree with a lot of the edits and feedback she shared.
Mhm.
And I think the distinguishing between the members and the board is
Okay.
critical and yeah, probably something that needs to be clarified a little further.
Yeah, I thought
Um,
that too, yeah, 'cause
yeah.
I was confused at first and then,
Yeah, it read almost like the membership was the board part, but I think and then you got to the board section. So I think we have to decide who is defined as what, and if the membership, like I know in our bylaws, I'm sure in yours too, like a membership organization refers to the members of that organization,
Right.
not the governing board.
right,
And if we're going to think about opening this up to other members, should that be part of the definition?
Right.
Beyond kind of the 4 institutions that have been identified. So whether or not any of that needs to be captured in the bylaws or not, I'm not sure, but
But it needs to be clarified that
yeah.
members of PHS are not de facto members of the archive.
Correct, yeah. In I think there's some distinguishing that needs to be done there, but yeah. If by members, we mean other organizations we invite in to be a part of this or not, I don't know if you had similar. There was just I think some clarifying points between the membership and the board that
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would suggest that this group has a conversation about is where, to what extent are there guardrails placed on who can become a member? You know, the thing that jumps off the page to me is the issue that we ran into with the Coakley group. You know, once you pass the threshold of majority members being government agencies, there's case law that would indicate that entity then becomes a public body itself. So, you know, if you placing guardrails like that, you know, I mean, fine, if that's what the group wants to do, that's okay. But it should be a knowledge, yeah, yeah, right, it should be a knowing decision when they
Yeah.
make it. Obviously, it's not an issue now because there's only the city involved. It'd be an impossibility, but. Or if there's other guardrails this group wants to place on who is eligible to become a member.
That was kind of my question in relation to the changes, like we have this set thing, but other than the members shall determine the number of members and the manner by which again gets to your point of all the members decide that or the board decides that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
going forward is, are the bylaws the right place to put in how we determine whether new members come in? Or is that not, does that not belong in bylaws and it belongs somewhere
And
else?
again, I would say that there should be some guardrails placed in the bylaws. The other one that I kind of talk about in my comments is about the charitable purpose. Because we have to keep in mind that there is, this entity will likely have to apply for and receive a charitable tax exemption in order to be exempt from paying property taxes. That's a huge expense that could be out there. So the body has to be mindful when it chooses to accept new members or modify its bylaws that, it has to keep that charitable purpose in mind and always have that as the kind of true north, right?
Yeah.
Any act you take to deviate from that puts that in jeopardy. Those are the kinds of guardrails that I recommended putting in there.
So how do we convey this, these issues, clearly to Hurwitz?
Well, I think we have a number of different comments so far, and I have my comments in the document, just in the PDF. We have Linnea comments. We could perhaps send it back and then have a follow-up conversation with a smaller group, perhaps.
Yeah,
Just a few people and Hurwitz to go through the comments and give them more direction. That's what I would think anyway.
Which way do you want to do that? Do you want us to meet first with the comments that we have and what we'll gather here today? By that, I mean, they go our group. Talk about it and then send it to him.
Yeah, I mean, if there are further comments that we want to
I think
put
we've
down
got
on
to,
paper.
there's a lot of comments. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of issues in this thing. There's a lot, and you can go both ways. It's a matter of preference. But fundamentally, we have to decide, I think in this group, which you were already talking about, is who runs the show ultimately? Who amends the Constitution? Who amends the Constitution really is the Articles of Agreement, but who amends the sub-document, which is the bylaws, and that is not the board of directors. It's the membership. They are controlling. And the membership this is a weird membership organization because it's not people. It's
Mhm.
entities.
Yeah.
And that's what you're all talking about, the confusion
Yep.
created by that.
Yep.
Linnea tries to get to that by saying, who is the person involved?
Right.
But fundamentally, do we agree on that? Are we saying these four entities, or someone else who's elected in, let's say, the Memorial of the Confederate States of America is going to now create an entity in Portsmouth and would like to become a member of the archives because we've got a lot of stuff to put in. We put them in, are they equal member to the four that are there? How are we gonna play
Or
that?
should their collections come in as a donation or a deposit to one of the existing organizations?
Very good.
Would be
Richard.
my
That is our fundamental weird issue. He isn't gonna have a quick answer to that.
Right, because he doesn't.
We have to politically have an answer
Right.
ourselves.
Yeah.
So how are we doing this? I mean, that's the bottom line. Because generally speaking, after we have the constitutional changing power, we have the operational power, which is the board of directors.
Mhm.
We've got that down. We figured out we get two, and the question is, how do we figure the three that are at large? And we can put it together a committee of the other board of directors that have a nominating committee to go through a process. We can create that in the bylaws. That's simple. Fundamentally, do we want these four people to be it forever? Are we gonna let somebody else in as a member? And if so, do we want to stay on
it's
what
not
basis?
organizations.
Yes.
entities,
Or-
yeah.
And you said
Entities, right.
people,
Yep.
but it's for entities.
I have-
And I am sure the city is going to, is willing to give up its power to make decisions to the other three, which is what this agreement says.
You'd want an odd number anyway, so that would help.
And my
Well,
point is
for the
different.
board. But we have 4 entities.
And three can decide they want to get rid of the city. Then I mean, that's in there. That's actually.
Bob,
It would be a majority, yeah.
Yeah, and that could happen with any of the entities, but you know,
But somehow I think of the cities in a different category.
sure, I agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I might suggest that instead of saying members, we say member organizations to clarify that.
always.
And also with your point about bringing in another partner, I think that we should be open to that, but because this is already a pay-for-play system, they can't just say, oh, you know, we collect this stuff, we want to join.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was where I was wondering, where do we
Yeah.
put, you know, are there criteria or some flow chart that says, actually, given your entity, you should set your things into one of the other members?
Right.
Member entities, I like.
Mm-hmm.
Or is there a situation that we could see where another entity would make sense as a member? I'm trying to think of anything
Well,
big enough, strong enough,
Yeah.
long-term, we're kind of in this room, so I can't picture that, but what if it happened?
well, and yeah, I mean, remember that each member is still going to have to independently, this is going to be an entity, and each member will still have to independently contract with the entity for the storage of records.
Mhm.
And that relationship is always available. I mean, and that contractual relationship is always, the organization could choose to contract with, I mean, you know, I'm just, you know, whatever, Walmart, you know, whatever. I'm just picking somebody that clearly shouldn't be a member,
Yeah.
but maybe there's some historical records they have, you know, I don't know, or cane companies, you know, somebody that may have records could contract with them to say, yeah, we'll store some of your materials here, but you're not a member.
Right.
But it's part of our purpose to preserve your records, even if you wouldn't make sense as a member. But you're right. I mean, it would seem like you'd want a really high bar,
Right. I
Very
agree.
add a new member.
Right.
I
Very
agree.
high.
I think in most cases, what Richard said is true, that they want to stick things in the Athenaeum's collection or in
For the
any
city.
other entity's collection. But
Donate them to one of the 4.
Is that how private collections would work as well?
I would love it.
It's the public-private archive, right? So what about all these private collections? How do they?
Well, we're private.
Sure, so are we, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, part of this conversation has been about potential
Mhm.
collections.
Yep.
Good. They can make a decision.
about
Which of the
donating.
4 institutions they think would best handle their collections? But I don't see any reason to establish 4, 5, 6, 10,
Right.
12,
Could be
you
infinite.
know, fairly small or even large collections. That don't have one of these institutions helping to think about managing them.
And what about the circumstance where one of the 4 organizations goes out of business for whatever reason,
that's,
25 years in the future? There's no.
You add
contingency.
the line,
There's no
or their
contingency.
assignees.
Okay, well, I mean, that's important, I think, probably.
Yeah, because as
Just in case.
nonprofits,
Right.
stuff has to go, all the assets have to go to another nonprofit.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to have a meeting first of our group after this meeting, or do we just want to send in the comments? That's the question.
Well, I think we need some way to present this clearly
The
to
Hurwitz.
the Hurwitz organization, so it's like, I kind of look to Trevor as someone who may be best qualified to at least put that together in some format, but maybe just a conversation is enough, or do you think we need to do a written thing?
maybe we have another conversation, you know, I'm not gonna send you a bill. He's gonna send you a bill.
Yeah, I know.
So maybe we get our heads around and so
Well,
that the
hey,
conversation with him will be more efficient.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
There
guess
is
that's
subcommittee
kind of what
that's
I'm
supposed to
getting
do
at.
that.
That subcommittee is us, that's what I'm saying. Should
Yeah,
the
no, I agree.
subcommittee meet,
Yeah, they should.
decide how we're gonna do it,
And I'm agreeing with you, yeah.
and then you can communicate.
Yeah.
But in that regard, I suppose I just soon hear what everybody else has to say as a member of that subcommittee while we're here.
Mhm.
Hate to be really weird about this, but there's a quick way to do this, which is to go over the documents.
Yeah. As-
Are those Linnea's comments right there?
These are
Starting with
Linnea's,
articles
yeah,
every- Yeah.
on the
that's
board.
her email.
Which I can't read from this distance.
I would be happy to read them to
Trevor, you
you.
have comments?
I have my own comments, yes.
Did you send those around?
I did, just before this meeting.
That's useful.
I'll see.
You got anything in
Would you
paper?
like me to read Linnea's?
I tried to print it. I didn't, my comments wouldn't print on the PDF. That's why I brought my laptop.
They were that bad?
Well, the comments wouldn't, you know, it just, I don't know why. It wouldn't.
It's
come out of
Adobe.
the doc.
It's
know.
Adobe.
It's Adobe.
What did you do? Comment on the draft?
Yeah.
Sure. So I've kind of discussed a little bit, you know, some of my comments already. But really they're, you know, it's really about the structure between the members and the board of directors. It should be really the board of directors making a lot of these decisions.
Right.
I do think it should be more difficult to remove a member than
Right.
Yes.
as it's put in here. There should be other criteria, maybe some criteria.
Like not paying their bills.
Sure, you know, maybe some criteria and a very high threshold vote. But
With or without
Not
assignment of
payment
cause.
for, Say.
yeah, I mean, there should be
3
cause.
years.
I don't think there should be really removal
But
without.
at least a statement.
And that's referring to member entities.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I had questions about how the other 3, you know, kind of at-large members would be appointed, but you know, obviously there's people in this room who have a lot more experience with nonprofit boards than I do, so I'd defer to you, certainly. And, you know, like I said, you know, a number of my other comments are just about just my knowledge of the charitable tax exemption, you know, putting restrictions on, you know, pecuniary interest for board members, just making that very clear that although board members can be reimbursed for their, you know, reasonably reimbursed for their services, that should not constitute a pecuniary interest.
What?
Hmm?
What did you say?
So board members, although board members, if a board member or member provides a service to the entity, they can
And this
be
entity is a 990,
to the entities of the nonprofit to,
is a 990, not a 990 PF, correct?
correct,
It's a pecuniary benefit transaction. I don't care what you put in your bylaws.
right. And I don't want that to
Definition.
occur. And that should not occur,
Correct.
because if you're doing that, then you're,
Right. The bottom line is if you can put in your bylaws that you can be compensated and all that, which is what they've got.
Yep.
And it is, and then you can do it, but it's considered a pecuniary benefit transaction, which means you've got to go through steps of approval with the Director of Charitable Trust.
right.
I was surprised not to see the Director of Charitable Trust mentioned in this at all.
Well, there's no reason to, it's in the statute.
But in, you know, in charitable tax exemption law, the elder trust case states that the board of directors cannot receive any pecuniary benefit,
I agree.
whether it's approved or not, you know, it doesn't matter. So that's was my concern, seeing that text.
I agree. I guess we're agreeing. I didn't.
Yeah, I think we are.
That's the board of directors, and then there's the members or the institutional members. How does that affect? How does that play with the charitable trust?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
I
yeah,
I can make a suggestion. That's a good point. It kind of goes to another point about the membership, the actual incorporators, which are, according to this, 5 people in Massachusetts, and the board of directors. If they're all individually, they're all subject to pecuniary benefit transactions.
Right.
So the bottom, that's still Linnеa's point. Who is going to be the representative of the Athenaeum. So we appoint someone and that person would be on the hook for a pecuniary benefit transaction.
Mhm.
I mean, the thing that's weird about that is that we have a membership that's they're gonna have their interests, they're gonna vote their interests.
Mhm.
There's conflict of interest built into this. When you get to the conflict of interest thing, we'll play with that.
But what if someone else, so let's say Tom was on the board, but someone else at the Athenaeum received compensation? Here, we're
It's-
talking about the board members'
That's correct,
compensation,
that's correct.
4.11. But that does not cover if someone else
All-
associated with a member entity receives compensation, correct?
Good point.
Sure.
That's what we're getting back to this issue about how does the membership really fit into this?
Mhm.
Does membership just appoint someone to be
Mhm. Representative.
a representative?
Or does each entity decide how they appoint the representative? Why?
That's the boring, so.
I mean, if your entity decides that the board member is appointed for 3-year term and yours decides that membership votes on the director to be sent to this group in December, and you have a job description of someone that includes, does that matter? As long as their
As long as it's clear.
composition is this many directors from the entity.
I think it just needs to be clearly spelled out by each of the organizations.
About how they'll choose their representative.
Use it, yeah.
How does it?
Why does it matter?
That's what I'm asking.
I don't see how it could matter.
I don't, it says 8 of the directors shall be appointed by the members of the corporation, with each member appointing 2 of the 8 directors, but do we care how they do that?
Probably not.
No,
I don't think so.
What about the next?
I gotta say, with these work institutions, whichever way they want to go to get the representatives in
Yeah.
front of us is fine with me.
Yeah.
That's why I would prefer not to enlarge this group, but to absorb new collections as they might come to us.
In the terms of office, it says the board will determine that.
And then I guess the question also arises to me anyway, is does the archive also have members?
Absolutely not. That was my opinion.
we'd have a separate committee, the Friends of the Archive Committee. to
Yeah,
raise
Friends of
money,
the Archive.
Separate entity.
Right, it's not part of this,
Part of this,
it's its own voluntary group.
Mhm.
its own 501c3, its purpose is to support the archives, which is a 990 501c3. Against the charitable exemption, but it's separate, the Friends of. That means they're not controlled by the archives.
Chuck, what's a 990?
Pardon?
What is a 990?
It's the federal
General
tax form for nonprofits, basically.
There are different kinds of nonprofits. 990 form is the purest kind, 990 PF is a different kind. There are different regulations for each one.
Of course. Well, there used to be anyway.
There are. Fundamental question is, who's gonna sign as the
Mhm.
incorporators? Well, we can start. We have to have articles of agreement. In order to have articles of agreement, the first documents that you have are a draft of that articles of agreement.
Mhm.
If you look at the articles of agreement, who's filing them?
Mhm.
Not the entities, not the membership, as individuals with addresses. Used to be, it had to be 10 people, now it only has to be 5. I don't know how many. It can be, how many, if there's a limit, I'd have to look at the statute. But we've got to figure out who's gonna sign off. First of all, to create the articles of agreement. Now, he didn't give us minutes of the organization meeting, we can talk about it in our group, about what we have to do with that.
Yep.
But we need to figure out who those 5, 6 people, 10, 20, 30, 40 people are gonna be.
What are the
Yeah.
responsibilities of those people?
Filing the articles of agreement and handling the minutes of the original organization meeting. After that,
They're gone.
goes to the membership and the bylaws, et cetera, but in the original organization meeting, you usually elect the bylaws and the officers. Maybe pro tem, whatever, but we gotta figure that all out.
Somehow I don't think 5 Massachusetts lawyers don't meet that,
No,
Criteria.
that criteria.
No, it should be us. It should
Yeah.
be people around the table.
Yeah.
That's what it should be.
I was curious why they filled in
They
samples.
just
Because
did
they
it.
do it themselves.
You read his article, read his memo, then it came with it. He just did it.
Oh,
Yeah. The first thing in the packet.
Yeah.
In the first packet, not the second packet.
if you would prefer individuals.
His
associated.
memo.
I mean, on behalf of the city, I know who should sign it.
Beg
Two
pardon?
of you. I know on behalf of the city who should be involved. It should be one or both of you two. Because you're the two who have been delegated authority by the city council and by the city manager.
Yeah, that's true.
So then I guess Emma, Tom and Linnea as well.
That was easy.
And that's 5.
There we go.
Doesn't
you
have
want
to
more,
be-
you can have more.
You can have more. I think you want more, frankly.
Yeah,
You can have more, yeah, but I'm just saying on behalf
I
of
would
for our
include
part.
Jeff with it too, then,
yeah, I would say the presidents and the executive directors
yeah.
Makes sense.
should be the logical.
Yeah, so board leadership or council leadership and staff leadership.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't
But
matter.
I mean, it seems to me
Makes it easy.
for us.
Right.
that-
And thinking for myself in my own job description, I would think that if I were to sign this, I should be previously voted the authority by the
Authorized,
board,
yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
because it doesn't say that in my job description.
Okay, yeah, yeah. If we're going to become a member of a new organization,
Right.
that's something that we need board support for.
Exactly.
Simple.
The board will say who can sign as the organization, articles of agreement, signers,
Right, so the
incorporator,
board would just,
probably the same
Oh,
people on the
that-
board of
that-
directors.
right, they can say that the executive director and the board chair are authorized to sign.
Or whoever they want as the board member.
Right,
Whatever, it doesn't have to be president.
Right.
It's not getting more complicated than it needs to be.
right,
2 people from each.
but it's just the governing authority of the sub-organization should approve of.
That's right.
who's-
So we've got to bring something back to them. That is what the articles of agreement are.
Right,
Mhm.
So does that mean the board chair of Strawberry Bank and the Historical Society as well as Linnea and Emma?
Yeah, well, or a member of the board,
Authorized
an
person.
authorized person
Any
from the
authorized-
board and the authorized.
I mean, the obvious people to do it are the people that they're saying that want to be on the board of directors.
Correct.
But we've already voted to do that. We've got authority to do that.
right.
So signing as an incorporator is somewhat additional, but somewhat the same.
Right.
Mhm.
But what I'm hearing is that we're all really comfortable that these 4 organizations are ultimately controlling this thing. So the parts of this agreement that deal with the members essentially deal with the political relationship between the 4 members
Member
who are
organization.
controlling it. We need to make sure we're okay on that, on those issues. Removal, votes. If they vote 3-1 and the city is the one, are we gonna be okay with the city going along with it? I just don't know the answer from the city's point of view. Are there any limits in that regard?
For a lot of things, but I mean, not for removal, for example. I don't think any group should be comfortable with that. I mean, given the amount that everybody's going to be investing in this, I
Don't
wouldn't,
disagree with
I
you.
wouldn't think that would be something that could be done without cause by a simple simple even supermajority vote,
Are there other things that, because the city is the city, they can't be in an organization where they're the minority? And that entity would go forward in their name because they're a member of the organization, even though a minority interest voted against.
No, I don't think so, because again, the city is going to be contracting with the entity, as everyone will be. So if, when you get into issue, you know, it's not like the entity is going to have control over city property, for example, unless that is done through a contract,
Mhm.
through some agreement, which is, you know, authorized. You know, like a lease that would have to be approved by a city council, for example. You know, if you're talking about city property, and, you know, just like any, um, I get your point, though. I get your, I mean, I certainly get your point, but,
And we can fit it in. I mean, we might as well fit it in if we can. If there's some special thing, let's put it in here.
yeah.
No offense, but I've dealt with the city before. It's amazing what comes up.
And
As a-
the city changes even more than the other individual.
Well, you're right, you're right.
That's right.
Because of elections.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the policy body of the city changes.
But this is a contractual obligation of the city.
Yep.
Do they need to give authority to people to sign? To be on the board of directors?
To be on the board, so they have given the city council's already given authority.
Oh, they've done that.
They've established who is going to be on the board of directors, and it's going to be it's going to be Vince as the council representative, and then it's going to be the city manager or her designee, and she has designated Christine.
Okay, good.
So that is who's on the board of directors, but. Yeah, I mean, I would think if there's going to be, you know, I mean, I'm sure for the city, but I would think every member organization would be concerned, you know, if there's going to be any. Nobody can bind the expenditure of funds. I don't think the board can bind the members to expend funds. Right? I mean, I know for our part, the money has to be budgeted by the city council in order for the expenditure of funds, so. I would imagine that it would be the same, so the board can't necessarily without further approval bind. And hopefully by having a city councilor on the board, they would be able to advocate for that, but that may be something we could put in the bylaws.
Think about it. That's what I mean about our committee getting together and
Right.
fine tuning
Think
this.
about that.
Mhm.
There's a way after elections. Somebody to put somebody who opposes this whole thing on the board.
Which can happen.
Just a point of process here. We're talking. We've decided who's going to be incorporating. We have to determine the articles of agreement to do that. But the discussion about the bylaws is ultimately determined by the people chosen to be directors, yes? The first bylaws?
Very good question. Where does the first set of bylaws come from?
I'm just thinking before we go down that
Chicken and the
path,
egg.
right, before we go down the path of saying,
Generally speaking, it's in the minutes of the organizational meeting.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, theoretically, it comes from the incorporators.
Mhm.
Theoretically, that's the construct, because they're the ones that are signing the document.
Mhm.
so we would want to do it at the time of the articles of incorporation.
Absolutely.
And then a board could determine changes in bylaws if they,
Change it, but look at the way amendment is written.
yeah,
They're trying to make any changes to the bylaws,
not frivolous.
not frivolous, but also controlled by the membership. Or they can do it, but by the membership and the final analysis.
And I don't know, maybe at some level that makes sense. You know, if you're gonna, all right, we have this and but then if you want to amend it at all, it has to go back to, you know, each member organization's board of directors or the city council, for example. Otherwise, you're stuck with what's here unless the members, you get some vote of the
Yeah,
board of directors of the members.
that is
Yeah.
a good point.
Mhm.
If you look at it's it's always the last, it's always the last time.
Yep.
These bylaws may be amended or repealed by a majority vote of the members.
Mhm.
Okay. These bylaws may also be amended or repealed by a majority vote of the entire board of directors if such amendment or repeal is subsequently also approved by a majority vote of the members.
So either
The
body
board of
can
directors
start it.
it can suggest it, but it's got to be ratified by the members later.
It's
And that
complicated.
almost sounds like it's a dissolution clause.
Mhm.
It's not a dissolution clause. There is a dissolution clause.
Okay.
It's in here.
But the
I
mem-
guess, can you put something down, Trevor, with this, talk to them?
Yep.
I believe New Hampshire law says that unless it's in the Articles of Agreement, the bylaws can be amended by the Board of Directors.
Right.
So that means we've got to have the limitation of amending the bylaws in
Way
the
back in
Articles of
membership.
Agreement.
Mhm.
It's not there yet.
so,
That should give, frankly, your points are all well made. I mean, the bottom line is it should give the membership of the organizations a lot of comfort that nothing's gonna come in that's gonna surprise them.
so I'm sorry to be nitpicking, but
No,
Um,
there's no nitpicking in
fine.
this.
so the member organizations could amend the bylaws or repeal the bylaws, just the four. If the board wanted to do so, those four members would have to agree.
Not all four.
I mean, a majority of the
Majority.
three of the four. However, we have multiple people from each organization on the board of directors.
Correct.
So what would ultimately determine the vote of the entities if they were in disagreement?
They tell you start of the day. That's what Linnea said in her notice. Who is the person who essentially is the member
Entity.
organization?
And that needs to be spelled out, like, so if there's a decision that has to be made, you know, what I would say, for the city's part, again, you know, I can't speak for all the other members, but if there's a decision that has to be made at the member level, you would either want, and we can make this decision, but you know, you'd either want a certification of vote by the city council that's provided by the city clerk and signed by the mayor, or you'd want, you know, something in writing from the city manager if it's a city manager decision.
Right, so is it every member entity needs to make that decision? You know, is it the board chair or the executive director of the Athenaeum? Is it the,
This,
so if Vince and I
You
disagree,
should, yeah.
this,
Well, no, that's different though, because that's a board of director. If you disagree, that's a board of directors decision.
Right.
That's not a member decision.
true, so the member,
The member for the city's part has
Entity.
to either be the city council or the city manager.
Yeah.
Those are it has to be one of
Those
those
are the two
two.
choices.
And we need to make that decision at the outset.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a decision that I need to have further conversations internally about
yeah.
who's making these
That
decisions.
makes me feel better though, because
Yes.
if every entity has that, they can either make a decision or they can stop or approve a decision by the board, as long as each entity has clarified who makes the final, who takes the final vote for their entity.
that has to be, but from day one, you said the same thing. How do we determine what a member's decision is?
Yeah, I think you have to lay that out. I mean,
We have to lay that out in some
Correct.
way, because that, I mean, talk about
do you verify?
cumbersome.
and how do you verify? Well, that's why, yeah, and it should be cumbersome for some of these decisions. It
Yeah.
should be you should not be a knee-jerk reaction decision. It should be something that's cumbersome for the big decisions that you're asking these members to make.
We also want to make sure that the at-large members are not in total representative of one of the member organizations. I can see a situation if there are two members from an organization entity and for some crazy reason, three at-large people represent that same organization. That would be almost a voting block of five people who would vote their interests at the exclusion of the interest of other people.
That's gonna happen.
Yeah.
In the board of directors, that's the name of the game.
But they're still not a majority. They still
Oh,
wouldn't
well,
be a
it could be
majority.
5 out of 11.
Right.
Yeah.
So it still couldn't be a majority though.
Well,
You'd
still,
only have
I
to get
think
over
that's-
one other, yeah.
That would be a skewed. Well, any
Mhm.
time, so is there some kind of a, something to be put into the initial bylaws that would limit or restrict that 3 at-large members can't be members or something of one organization?
I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't either.
I wouldn't limit it. I would have a nominating committee.
Mhm.
Would put in by the board of directors to nominate 3 at-large members,
Mhm.
3 at-large directors,
So it can be considered.
so it can be considered. That's the way you control an organization, the nominating committee. And make sure nobody gets on the train that's gonna slow it down.
Because there are plenty of people, even in this room, who are members of all of these organizations.
Yes, that is
But
the.
how do you- Yeah, but everyone, everyone vested self.
So you need a nominating committee to sort through all the many possible people out there who'll do the best for you, write the biggest checks.
And we really have to figure out, when we say a member has said something, what is the, what do we look to find that answer?
And maybe you have a, you know, just a clause for each organization right in the bylaws, you know, this is. You know, this is how you know the city has made a decision that, you know, this is what it means when the city, you know, as a member makes a decision, when you're asking the city, and this is how the Athenaeum will make that kind of decision. I don't know, or do you just delegate it to those entities? I don't, you know. But I would want certainty on how you measure it. You know, if it were me and I was in this organization, I would want to know upfront how I'm gonna measure whether a member has made a choice, especially when you're talking about the city, because
That changes.
that can change.
And how is it?
And how long is that decision good for, you know?
That's right.
Right, all those kinds of, you know, if the city council votes, how long is that vote good for? Right,
Elections.
it's good till the next election. If the Athenaeum board votes, you know, how long is that vote good for? And it will likely vary by organization.
And then.
Are we
is
too
there-
much in the
is
weeds?
there a
here?
legal process that, and has to happen with the documentation of that? I mean, so, or is that just part of the 990? If there's a change of leadership in the member category. I mean, so let's say Tom is the member representative. But that changes.
But you
Where
would-
does that have to be?
But you would do it by, you wouldn't name anyone personally, you would name them by position.
Positions, right.
You would say the executive director or highest ranking official of the entity. Or you'd say the governing board.
Generally speaking, we would let them decide their process for making
Decisions.
the empowerment of that person to make the decision.
Maybe. And that may be true. I would want it spelled out for the city in the document, though, how you know the city has made a decision.
Give me an example.
Well, do you accept, if the city manager, you know, if you need a vote of this, you know, if there's some member level decision that needs to be made. Who are you asking? Are you asking the city manager? And it's just the city manager writes a letter on her letterhead that says, you know, the member city of Portsmouth votes yay or nay. Or would you want a certification of vote out of the clerk's office saying the city council took up your question and they voted yay or nay? And the city clerk and the mayor have signed that as a, you know, official proclamation. Which do you want, you know? And I don't think that's a question, frankly, for this group. I think that's a question for
Upstairs.
Yeah.
somebody above my pay grade.
And I guess there's a level in which I want to protect this from political whims.
That's correct.
And so, I mean, I would personally like to see that rest with the city manager more than
Yeah.
the mayor. Or the city council.
Sure. I mean, you know, but
It's
the
a
city,
management issue.
Hmm?
It's a management issue.
Yeah,
It could not be a management issue, though.
well, or is it a policy issue?
It could be, depending on what happens.
Yeah. Well,
You control that though.
well, within the city, you know, the city council can, you know, create a policy for the city manager. So,
and I would, yeah. I wouldn't want it, I don't know, I'll have to talk with the city manager about it.
yeah,
Hey, pardon?
More direction. I'll have to talk to the city manager and get more direction on this particular point,
Fair enough. I mean,
yeah.
which I will do.
from my point of view, I go the other way. I want it to be easy, because if we need to make a decision, I want to be able to make a decision. It's gotta be,
In the new institution, right?
this institution's gotta go through some sort of a huge process.
Right.
Look how long it took us to get the decisions to get as far as we are now.
You're right.
I mean, the most the thing that comes to mind is acquisition of a building, major issues like that. If we get into a problem, we want to be able to act. And you're gonna tell me you shouldn't worry about it because in the original bylaws, the board of directors can handle most stuff,
That's right.
and you would be right.
And if there's some issue in there that really does rise to the level of the membership decision, it's something you don't want to be a knee-jerk reaction. You want to take a little slow.
That's right. I agree with that.
You can't disagree with that the way you put it, but I mean.
That's
Why I
why
put it
it's
that
well
way.
said.
If you excuse me, I've got to get to another meeting,
Of course you do.
but
On that note,
I would like to confer with Jeff before sending my notes
Okay,
so that we're
Sure.
actually saying close to
Same
the same thing.
Right.
yeah,
But real important for him to understand is that we're going to meet, Jeff's gonna be in the meeting.
That's right. So
We're gonna
that,
go through all of this stuff. We're gonna go
Right.
through the bylaws, provision by provision,
Good.
and make a recommendation.
right, but I would like to be sure that we're on the same page before you meet.
so I just, at this point, maybe you'll see Jeff before I do. I would like to schedule a meeting
Yes.
of the small group.
Mhm.
The legal group, if you will. And so we can keep going and, you know, I don't want to get another bill from Hurwit without having them having the input from us.
Right. Exactly.
Agreed.
I think Linnea will be back next week.
Okay,
Would you forward that email to us? Or
This one,
the Linnea one?
Yeah,
I can forward.
yes,
yes, definitely.
um. That's all.
Oh, okay,
Thank you.
I
Yeah, I
wasn't
know
sure
you
if
have
you
to
were gonna
go.
schedule the meeting right here and
Oh,
now.
well,
Be good.
if we can do that,
In
that would
which
be
case I
great.
will then notify Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that. And we had agreed originally that Monday noon was a good time.
That's usually good for Jeff.
Mhm.
And I think everyone agreed that that was a workable time, so. And I think Hurwitz said that worked for them generally as well. So. I'm, you know. Well, Linnea will be back,
Next week sometime.
If we,
Meaning like a week from today. She won't be back during.
so on the fifth, I mean, that's not a week from today. That would work.
Oh, I have no idea if that would work. I just know that when she'll be back.
I know she and I have an Arts and Culture Commission meeting in here at 1 o'clock on the 19th. So we could meet, ostensibly, we could meet right before that because we have to be here already at 1.
Mhm.
So we could do noon on the 19th.
Mm-hmm.
That's good for me.
Bingo.
All right, I will let Jeff know. Thank you all. Thank you, George.
Thanks.
She does just say in this email that on Monday, April 21st at 2:30, you guys will have been just wrapping up your Arts and Cultural Commission.
Yeah, we did this past.
That was April.
This
That
is
was
a-
April.
That's an old, that's a.
April
old-
versus
yeah.
May.
Gotcha.
Yes, the 19th is our next meeting,
Next.
so that should be easy enough for her and I to be here.
Where? Here?
To give
Yeah.
us a little more time, would it be better to start at, let's say, 11:30? Just because I don't know how long, I mean, hopefully we can get half an hour with her, but we need some time before actually talking to,
Let's do this meeting and then set the thing up with her.
okay.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
Is an hour enough, or do I?
We'll see. I think so. I mean, I
I think
think we
it should
can
be sufficient.
battle it out.
Can I just give somebody my last comment, which is on the terms of office, since I'm not in that meeting? I think it would be nice if we established the terms of office as opposed to
Right.
this.
Yep,
And I'd really like to see it laddered
yes.
so that we don't have all new people coming in and all. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Overlap.
That sounds good,
yeah.
but the reality is these people aren't gonna come in.
No, everyone come in together, but some of them serve 3 years, some serve 5 or something.
Yep.
Some way so that you've got, each entity has someone who's had some experience on the board rather than 2 new board
mean-
members.
Sounds good, but for the city's part, I mean, you're gonna have inherently one of the members is gonna have a 2-year term
Right.
because they're gonna be a city council
So
member.
it's already laddered.
And then the other person, you know, you, for example, I mean, you might be the board rep, you might be the city manager's designee for, you know, for 5 years or whatever.
Right.
Or it could be more frequent than that, you know, but that's gonna be up to the city manager. And so I think for the city's part anyway, I wouldn't want to put those kinds of restrictions because
Okay.
you're gonna have some inherent turnover and then some inherent stability.
Okay.
That's just how it's gonna go.
All right.
And Emma, I may be wrong, from your point of view, we'll have the same problem.
With
Like
like
turnover
the
and
board
turnover.
chair or the,
Well, so are 2-year terms good, but staggered?
no, they're saying that we don't need to stagger them.
No.
Because inherently within each entity, you're gonna have some
They're
staggering
gonna
of
make the decisions of. who
your
wants to
board
come.
member who's on the board is gonna be going away and,
People drop dead.
good point.
Yeah, I mean, the question is a little, I mean, for the 3 at-large members, I don't know how you really want to work that.
Not yet.
I'm not really familiar with how that process is even gonna go.
Okay, pardon,
With the 3 at-large members,
just give them a 2-year term.
Sure.
We'll give a 2-year, we'll come up with it, let's put it down, 2-year
3-year
term,
terms,
start from
Yeah, with
there.
the maximum number of terms. And I'll compare notes on what.
We
our
may
individual
not-
Bylaws say.
Do you want to have maximum number?
For the
I would.
at-large members. You're talking about, not
just the at-large, right?
Yeah.
No. What, do we
Mhm.
have, do city commissions have,
Term
point
limit?
of reference? Do they have term limits?
No,
If you look at the city committees, they haven't changed in eons.
Yeah.
Then what do you
No.
do with at-large members? You would love to have a limit. I'm speaking from
Yeah.
board member experience.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's been on the board 30 years and really needs to leave the board.
Mhm.
How do you do that
Right.
if there's not a board, if there's not a limit?
In terms of the at-large members, we've got a nominating committee, so they could do it if they wanted to do it.
The nominating committee is the
But,
control.
But if, only if there was a vacancy.
no, it's a
Well, no,
2-year term.
2
they
year.
have to
Oh,
be
yeah, if
reappointed.
you have a term limit, yes, I'm agreeing with you, term limit.
2 year, no, 2
Oh,
years,
your
2
term.
years, 2 years. Do you reappoint them or not? Well, if they're trouble, you don't,
That's what we were saying. So
Yeah.
2 years.
So it's up to the governing committee or nominating committee.
Exactly.
Okay,
for the at-large people.
Yeah.
The other people will
Yeah.
be their individual entities.
okay.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Mhm.
yeah, no,
Have fun.
Fine.
and I'm sure there's gonna be a lot more details. Like that.
Yeah.
Some of those will end up getting ironed out after we get going on this.
Do the individual entities have to amend their own bylaws in response to this, or are they all encompassing? Or,
Generally speaking, it's just a normal business from the entity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
before anyone leaves, can we approve the February 24th minutes? We didn't do it last time because we didn't have a quorum.
So moved.
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Interesting.
I said second, but I probably shouldn't have, but
I think so.
that's all right. Give it to somebody else. I took you as the chair.
There is. You don't know there is.
I saw you
Nothing
passed the
no
gavel.
else
I
is
saw it.
I passed the gavel.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
When is our next meeting?
Good.
Our next meeting is scheduled
The
for
26th.
20.
May.
That's
Memorial
That's Memorial Day.
Probably not gonna make it.
Yeah,
Good
What,
call.
tomorrow?
Yeah,
Is that?
early this year.
It is
Now-
crazy
Is it-
early, yeah.
Do we want to move it to,
So June 2nd or May 19, if we want to stay with.
Well, you guys are meeting
Mondays.
on May 19th, right?
In the afternoon,
You might
yeah.
not have anything to share. We met in the morning.
Okay.
Well, without Jeff here, we didn't talk about search for location.
For. Oh, search for location for the building. I
Yeah.
thought- I was thinking meetings. You can have the meeting.
Where's the
isn't
staff
that
meeting?
really slow here today?
The staff.
Haven't
meeting?
noticed it.
What do you mean?
I'm sorry. First of all, we set up the next meeting.
That's what we're
We're
trying to
doing
do.
right
Okay.
now.
So
With
if we,
respect to the meeting, the staff meeting that we're having on the 19th, where is it?
oh,
On the 19th,
11:30, where?
oh, at, legal,
Okay,
It'll either be in the law library or or if
That's
that
great.
book, we
Yeah.
can go somewhere else.
City Hall.
so we're doing it at 11:30.
fine.
Why don't we do this meeting still at 9?
Yes.
19?
19.
Do you want to meet before their meeting?
We're gonna be here all day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's me.
No, but you work here.
That's right. I always forget that.
You're paid to be. here.
Yes.
19th. I'll check just to make sure we can get the room
Okay.
on the 19th.
What time did we say the internal meeting was on the 19th?
I'm sorry,
11:30 is what Chuck said, right? 11:30 on the 19th for our legal meeting, Chuck?
Yep.
Okay.
not on the 19th, right?
Yeah.
All of the meetings are on the 19th. Everything.
Oh, yes.
9
Agree
o'clock,
with you.
11:30.
Hey, Vince, in that case, you want to,
Reserve the.
Vince,
Yeah.
you want to schedule that, if, therefore, you want to schedule this meeting at 10 o'clock?
No,
And
if we do
then,
adjourn
then
before you
you
lose-
move from
Yeah.
10 o'clock to 11:30
So,
as opposed to 9
Oh, yeah.
o'clock?
You're losing too many people. You gotta adjourn.
yeah, I just want to make sure because I had May 5th for the,
Fifth is next week.
We discussed the 19th when Tom was here.
Yep.
Well, somebody can just unconfuse Vince.
and 2, no. Because I had the little small group meeting on the 5th.
No,
No,
the 19th at
That's the-
11:30.
okay. Okay,
Sounds good to us.
So then this group is meeting at 9 or later? than
Well, you want to make, when you
Same day.
have this group meet at
10
10,
o'clock.
Catch
so
up.
you could roll right into the other one at 11:30?
That makes sense.
That seems logical.
What a weird idea. Making sense.
Yes.
So,
New concept.
so we want to meet at 10?
Yeah, 10 o'clock, and then you guys can roll into the other one at 11:30.
As long as the room's available.
Yeah, as long
yeah.
as-
I'll have to find out.
That out, just let us know.
Yeah.
Okay,
10 on the 19th. Trevor, you're gonna buy us lunch, so we're gonna be here all day. I'm kidding.
You have a
I'm
pretty
kidding.
expense-
I promise you that's not in our budget.
you have a pretty big expense account, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Huge.
With the Mercedes, the city loans me too,
Yeah.
you know?
You got one too? Oh, that's so cool.
They just have us.
Say, is this,
Get a car?
yeah, we still live?
Still live. We have not closed the meeting. so-
Well, you-
Send it to the newspapers.
Screwed now.
Done.
Would you like to close our meeting, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman?
is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye.
Now we say all those funny things.
Yes.